My name is Siobhan Cancel, and I recently started a brand new business, so I guess I'm a business owner. Um, and I grew up, I was born in Anaheim, California. Actually, spent my early years right across the street from Disneyland, so never went to bed before 9 o'clock after the fireworks. um, Pretty much moved around Orange County and then lived in Manhattan Beach, California for a little bit before my mom took me up here in 1992. Well, we moved up here right after the Rodney King riots. My mom we lived right around in that Compton area, and so we had to. I remember her packing us up in the middle of the night with like her vacuum cleaner and some clothes and a couple books, and we just drove straight up here. And we ended up in Eugene. My mom had a friend up here, and that's where we stayed for the first like month. And then after that, we got a house that was right next to what used to be the library, but is now is Home for Goods. Very unique experience coming from like Los Angeles, and I also have family out in Queens, New York. So I grew up in a very diverse urban sort of area. So coming up here was quite the culture shock. um, and just I've actually moved away from Eugene 3 times and I just keep coming back. So the first time that I was here in for grade school for a little bit. And that was the first place that I was ever called a nigger. And it's actually the only place that I've ever been called that word. So that was kind of my introduction to Eugene. Um, then I left, went and lived in New York for a little while, and then came back here for high school. And high school, I guess, is difficult for everybody, but I mean, I went to North. There was only maybe one or two other kids there that looked like me. The rest was predominantly white. And it didn't ever feel like a place that I fit in. So I didn't really attend much, which of course caused problems, but I was still able to graduate with honors. And then I moved to Ashland to go to college because at the time it was the only place offering a degree in what I wanted to do. And I had an altercation with the Jackson County Sheriff's Department out there. And long story short, we brought the lawsuit for the physical damages that they did to me, and the courts didn't say that it had merit, and we ended up getting a small settlement that really didn't help. But then from there, I went back to Los Angeles and spent about 10 years down there working in hospitality, which was my chosen field. And my mom moved back to Eugene right around 2015, and she wanted to start her own business. So I said that I would move up here. I found a job, got to be a GM of a hotel out here, and moved back up here in 2015. And ever since then, I've been a lot more active in our community. I'm older, so I know a little bit more, and I've just been really working on forming bonds with our local community members, trying to see what we can do to make this a more welcoming place where people that look like me want to, stay and have kids or just stay. Little fun fact, I've been stopped by EPD more time in the past 5 years here than I have in the 10 years in LA and the 3 years in New York. So.
What did you get stopped for mostly?
Nuisance, failure to put on my turn signal, crossing over the center line. One time, I guess I pulled out into the farthest lane instead of the one right next to me, so I got lit up for that. And then just that feeling that you have when you know that the police are kind of against you. Every time you see one in your rearview mirror, you're just like 10 and 2, 10 and 2, and you didn't do anything wrong. I mean, you didn't do anything wrong, but you're still scared beyond belief, and so that is more of the trauma that I've experienced by EPD than any singular instance. And one thing also too, as far as safety and just the daily trauma that is experienced when a Black person or BIPOC or even LGBTQIA leaves their house is just like deflector shields up. Like, we're just trying to make sure we don't experience any more pain that is the normal amount of pain that we experience each day. And for me personally, the only two places I feel safe in Eugene is this house right here and the Mims house that's over by the Shelton McMurphy Johnson house. Those are the only two places where I do not think harm will come to me. Everywhere else in this town, in this state, I couldn't make that same assumption. So I feel personally like my whole life growing up, I was told that, our ancestors and our family members have fought for my right to vote, so I better get out there and go do that. So we weren't really taught the ways that the government is set up, like, your secretary of state versus your city councilors versus like the mayor, and then eventually like your governors and stuff. So I just knew that it was important for me to vote. And as I've gotten a little bit older and I've learned a lot more, what I've recognized is that a lot of people of color don't don't vote. They think that their vote doesn't matter, and so they don't vote. But then there's a lot of complaining about why nothing ever changes. So I think that one thing we could really do to help improve just awareness and knowledge around voting is get more people educated about how the system actually works, like the different levels of government, the how those levels impact your life directly, who your representative is. So if you do have complaints, you can actually go to somebody. And so that's what we were doing before the vote happened earlier this year. It's just educating BIPOC youth about, like, if you vote for this, then this is how you can be impactful. If you have any questions, this is who you can reach out to. And, like just getting them more focused on the local government elections as opposed to just, the president. I think it needs to happen more, not just with families, because I noticed like some of my white friends, they've been voting. They knew, like around the dinner table, they would talk about like the different government offices and who their legislature is, and who actually is like the mayor, and who sits in the mayor's office and the governor's office and stuff like that. Whereas like around my dinner table, there was a lot of talk about, can we make rent? Are we going to be able to pay for electricity? So I think that it's not just educating the youth. We also have to somehow find a way for the parents to want to get involved, because if they're not the ones that are advocating for it, then it's sometimes difficult to just listen to like your teachers or your elected officials. So what I personally think is that for our community here, here in Eugene and Springfield, Lane County, there needs to be more education around the history of the state. I think that there is a lot of maybe a misnomer about how, oh, we're so liberal, we're so welcoming, there's so many places to get assistance, there's so many different ways that you can have success if you want to. But it kind of just glosses over this whole seedy underbelly of Oregon. And Oregon was founded on those laws where they were against slavery, but if you were Black, you couldn't live here. And that's kind of shaped our community to what it is today. And it's something that, we have to be able to talk about. We have to talk about how less than 50 years ago, the KKK would still be marching down Willamette Street. We have to talk about the Proud Boys that are in different areas around our county. We have to really take a look at how people being silent is really perpetuating the problem. And I think most importantly, we have to stop looking to our BIPOC community members to teach everyone this. You as a white person, I want you to listen to me, but then I want you to go back and talk to your white community members, because I'm not always going to be there to speak to all of them, nor should it be my responsibility to. If you really want to do the work, then there's going to be work involved, and it's not just talking to me. In fact, that's like the precursory work. If we were talking about like the steps, that would be like before you even really started the work, was you were getting maybe the outline. And I think once we can kind of get talking about why Oregon is, and especially Eugene and Springfield are where we are at today, then we can kind of take a look at where we want to go. So we have to kind of take a look at like the data, right? So over the past 20 years, Eugene's Black population has doubled. It's gone from a whopping 1% to 2% in the past 20 years. So when I hear that, I wonder, why is that? What are we doing as a community that is making people that look like me not want to stay here? And there's many different areas, but I think talking about the history and being open about it, and absolutely not tolerating the silence anymore, is probably how we'll get started on what pathways we can make to make our community more welcoming and diverse. And it's like, so I'm a Black woman, so I don't get to be in those conversations that are all white people, so I don't really know what's being said, but I can hear from like some of my friends that there is more communication, like one of their children came home from their one of their like day camps or something, when they're pods, and they had spent the whole day learning about like kind of the the atrocities that Oregon would commit to people who decided that were Black, that decided to stay in Oregon, and how there was a fine and how they would be whipped like 40 lashes for every month that they stayed here or something like that. And it just really, for that child to go home and talk to that parent, and that parent had no idea, now that parent is looking into the research because someone decided to talk to that white child. And I think personally that there needs to be more conversations like that. As a person of color growing up in a very white supremacist sort of education system, I'm very familiar with revisionist history. And so I got a whole supplemental education from my family on like how Black people were here, how Black people were actually brought here, and how many, like what the Underground Railroad really was, what the Green Book was, and then I got a history about our own personal family tree, how we came from like Barbados and Trinidad. So a lot of that supplemental history is what's given me the ability to kind of do my own research. And I had a lot of help and support from my family, but especially living here in Eugene, there's sometimes the parents don't know, they don't know that history, so they can't give it to their child. And then their child kind of grows up just like swallowing what's been given to them by the education system, which isn't bad, but there's just so much more. It's like looking at something through like this size of a hole when really you've got the whole room. And I think a lot of that too, especially here in Oregon, is we don't really have any representation of teachers of color in our schools.
Mhm.
We don't really have a lot of Native Americans in our schools teaching, and I'm not a teacher, but I talk to a lot of teachers when I volunteer for Stand for Children, and a lot of them do their own lesson plans, especially right now during this time of COVID. So they've been able to integrate a bunch of stuff that wouldn't necessarily have been taught within the four walls of a school. But even just when school is happening normally, if you have a teacher that has that lived experience, then no matter what, they're going to bring that to the classroom and the kids will benefit from it. We don't have a lot of diversity here. I think it's like something for 40% of our kids are of color, only 10% of our teachers are. And so it's a huge gap that I think hopefully we will be working on to help close. I personally feel that I have a voice, and that's because I have a lot of people who have helped me get to this point, a lot of people that have showed me how to make the connections, where to focus my energies on when speaking. I don't think a lot of people here have that foundation, especially BIPOC community members. You have to kind of take into account, like this is something I've been working with some of the government offices, even our local city. They want to bring in these people on these committees so these committees can go and fix an issue, but they don't take into account that the people that they're looking to bring in already are marginalized so much. We're in a different socioeconomic status, usually lower income. We usually tend to have families or two jobs. I mean, so where are we supposed to find the time for this? Most of these committee positions are not paid for. And then on top of that, we're doing work that is traumatizing to us. I mean, you're asking us to relive pain again and again, or however many times a month that committee meets. And then we're also putting ourselves out there to be not just rejected, but almost told like what we've lived isn't true. It's like, I can't tell you, I've heard so many times, it's like, oh, well, I've never heard that. Are you sure? And it's not only disheartening, it's kind of a little bit upsetting. It's like, that's like me questioning somebody who, like a doctor who went to school for 8 years, residency for 4, and then when they tell me, that looks like you may have this, and I'm like, I don't know, I've never heard of that. Are you sure? So it's a little disheartening, and it makes you feel a little dejected. And so that emotional and mental pain is almost, I feel like in the past few months has been more noticed, but it's been largely been disregarded as people have asked BIPOC community members to help make things better. As far as like allies and stuff, I feel that The best way an ally can help is to start off with like, I'm listening. You know, if you want to talk, then that's great. If you don't want to talk, then I'll just sit here. I think there's a lot of pressure put on BIPOC community members to explain, to talk about their experiences, to propose solutions, and then there's not nearly ever really any recognition. It's like if a program gets created that helps young Black girls learn how to do their hair, it's usually under an organization that is largely run by white people. So you never really get to know why that program was created, who created it, and the young Black girls that it helped, you know? So I think more recognition would be helpful as far as the work that has been done, that will be done. Um, and I think also staying in the game. I have a friend of mine who is trying to do some diversity training at their work, and it's hard. I mean, they are a white male, and they're trying to teach this whole office, this whole company, why we even need this, let alone like explain what it will be, but why they even need it. And it's very hard for them. And we're constantly talking about like, how do we stay in the game? How do we keep our voices heard? Because if we go away, then nobody's advocating for this anymore. People can go back to the silence or not seeing it or just sweeping it under the rug. And so as an ally, I would say staying in the game is very important, because if I'm not able to get into your game or your table, you know, then at least you having a seat there lets some of my voice be heard. And the people I speak for, you know, I may not say everything that they're saying, but it allows some of their voices to be heard too. So I guess like understanding, like not always asking us to talk, and just staying in the game, speaking on behalf of people that look like me would probably be two of the most influential things. That, and just not tolerating the little innuendos, the microaggressions, the things that you know are kind of wrong. You're like, that just doesn't sound right. Say that. And if you're, even if you're not sure about how to go about addressing something, or even like, so like when this whole thing went down, a lot of people reached out to me about, oh, well, what do we say, what do we do? And I'm like, I don't care what you do or say, but do or say something, even if it's wrong. Just get out there and say that this is wrong. That's all you really have to say. You don't have to give me a whole page resolution about how you pledge to commit to BIPOC community members. Just say that the murder of George Floyd was horrific and wrong. That's it. But I think a lot of people get caught up in like, oh, well, I don't want to offend, or I don't want to like step on anybody's toes, or and I get that, but that is a bunch of malarkey. I mean, if you really want to do the work, like anything that you might want to do, you're going to have to take into account you may fail. And I don't understand why this sort of work project would be any different. And so I think that a lot of allies could help by calling it out when it happens, because again, I'm not in that room. I don't get to be in that room with all white people. And I think, you know, like just also making the space for somebody else to get into that room. Like a lot of people have been trying to hire BIPOC community members, which I've been very happy to see, because this whole volunteering stuff is, from what I've seen, this whole volunteering stuff is geared towards older white people. You know, so is a lot of our office positions too, like our government positions. It's our city commissioner positions. You know, I mean, I found out the other day our mayor only makes like $25,000 a year. Who could live on that? So I think that that's something that we really have to examine as well, because I hear a lot of people saying, oh, well, we want to put people in office and we want to put people at the table. And it's like, well, if you really want to put people at the table, then make their seat equitable to them. Understand that the 65-year-old retired white man may not need as much help as the 35 single mother of two. And if you want to have both of those voices represented, then you may have to add a stipend for childcare, maybe some food for the mother that you wouldn't have to add to the gentleman who's 65 or older. And and that's fine. It's not inequitable, or it's not in inequality or anything like that. You are actually taking a look at where people are and meeting them there, so you can have them at the place that you want them to be, because you apparently need their voice. I guess the most important thing that I would want people to know, if we really do want to create a more welcoming place here in our community, is to purposefully look for people that you have nothing in common with and see how you can come together to maybe perhaps form a bond. And by that, I mean, if you happen to be a white gentleman, go and see if you can join. Like, there's a group called the Black Professionals of Eugene here. Maybe you can't join, but you might be able to talk to some of the members. Do whatever you can to get a different perspective. I mean, I'm not saying go out, like for me, I'm not going to go out and try and find a white supremacist. I don't think that's a good way to go. I don't think I'd survive. But but as far as like, if we're trying to do good in our community and make it more welcoming, we're going to have to not only value each other's experiences, but understand that we may never get those experiences and they're still just as valuable. In fact, even more so, because that person is taking the time to share them with you. And I really, one of the reasons I moved back and I'm staying is because I have hope. I really, really do. I have hope. I talk to many people in our community daily. And it's not just community members, not just BIPOC community members. It's not just city officials. It's everybody together. And there seems to be this like nose to the grindstone, we're going to get this done sort of feel that I've never seen here since I've been here, which is, gosh, a long time now. So I think that would be the best way for us to start making it more inclusive, is to just one person, go find somebody that doesn't look like you and go say hi and strike up a conversation. Oh, that, and join your local NAACP.
Well,
Good.
thank you so much
Yeah,
for
Thank you.
sharing with us.
really appreciate it.
We appreciate it.
My pleasure.